All right, welcome to today's conversation about Microsoft Viva. We're going to have a really interesting conversation today. And I want to say right at the start, this is such an impactful session, such an impactful topic that as we go through the content today and we talk about modern employee engagement and productivity, be ready to connect this content to your team. We would love, after the session is done, to do a private session deep dive with your team to go beyond a 30-minute session into each of the topics that we're talking about today surrounding Microsoft Viva in deep dives so you can get a complete understanding of them. You can ask all your questions. You can drive the information into your team and help them to understand how this can benefit your organization. So at the end of this webinar, there's going to be a pop-up that asks for engagement around a follow-up. Please engage us around that. We would love to provide that education session for your team, and it'd be a fantastic way for us to drive into the details. So without further ado, let's talk about Microsoft Viva. Today, you have myself. I'm Nathan Lozanowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. And you also have Anthony Escobedo, who is a technical architect with Concurrency. Welcome back to the webinar series, Anthony.
Super excited to be here and talk about Viva.
Awesome. So what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to talk about the why. We're going to talk about a few statistics and information coming out of a recent work trend index that was first posted by Satya Nadella. It is such an informative piece of work that enables us to understand why this is important for us to talk about. Then we're going to talk about how Viva helps to address some of these challenges. And we'll break that down into its capability areas that allow us to be able to use Viva to be able to address workplace engagement challenges. Also, don't forget, we have some upcoming webinars. We're going to be talking about Power Platform and its relationship to Dynamics. And we're also going to be talking about ransomware and zero trust. And in particular, that ransomware one is going to be interesting because we're going to be breaking it down into a live compromise scenario and how that relates into zero trust scenarios. So let's get started talking about Viva. So the first thing I want you all to think about is the transition that occurred roughly a year ago, where every business had at least a substantial percentage of businesses told their employees that tomorrow you're going to work from home and we don't know when you're coming back. And that presented a rapid transformation of how our workforce engaged with each other and engaged in how they collaborate and how they deliver capabilities, how they engage their customers. It rapidly transformed the relationship between each other and rapidly transformed the relationship between each employee and their workplace. We're about to encounter the next transition, and it doesn't look like a transition of just going back to work. It's not like we're reversing what happened a year ago. This is a transition that will take on a new hybrid nature. And employees are expecting something different. The businesses are expecting something different. Employment relationships are taking on a different nature. And our goal in this next transition is to keep the aspects that moving to a remote workforce has enabled that are good, but bring back certain aspects of that relationship that were really important. You think about your relationship with your friends. There's something different about friendships based upon Zoom calls. You yearn to get back in person with them. You yearn to have person-to-person relationships. You yearn for that getting in a room with people that you know and love. The same sort of circumstances exist in the hybrid workplace. But we also have to recognize that the remote workplace has also enabled certain types of relationships that didn't exist before. So our goal in talking about this today is to understand that every business is going to be transitioning a chasm between where they are and where they intend to be. And it's going to be more difficult than the one that they transitioned in trying to work from home. When we think about the transition to hybrid work, realize that many employees understand and want to remain in a flexible remote work environment, and they're in a buying market as an employee. It's an employee's market. But then also, they also yearn for that in-person work, and there's a tension that exists between these 2 points. There's a tension between flexibility and remoteness and in-person and collaboration, and navigating that difference that exists between those 2 points. The tools we're talking about today aid us in driving the better outcomes from those 2 different points. Also realize that there's an awareness gap in our businesses right now. If you were to ask me about how the pandemic has impacted me, in many ways it's had some positive impact, because I've been home more, I've been around my family more, I've had more of a presence to be combining my work life with my home life and having that be a positive thing. But for many people, it hasn't been as positive, especially for people that are frontline workers that have continued to be in an in-person scenario, or people like new employees that are getting introduced to your business. One of the reasons why many business leaders have been so successful during the pandemic is they already had that built up relationship capital. Many individuals didn't. So they're joining a company without relationship capital. So it's harder for them to feel at home. It's harder for them to be successful in a scenario where they don't have those relationships already created. Also know that digital overload is impacting us. At March, you can see this tremendous impact between where we were using technology and where we weren't, and how that line represents at least half of the interactions that we weren't having before, are now having in a digital means. And that has an impact on a person. That digital overload has an impact on how we work and our effectiveness and the relationships that we have. And then also, and this is particularly relevant for exploratory work. It's particularly relevant for work that's tied to new employees or people that we haven't normally interacted with, is that when the pandemic hit, our close networks, meaning people we interacted with a lot, rose dramatically in a digital means. But what happened was the people we didn't interact with a lot, the distant relationships, the relationships that you only encountered via informal interactions. You met them at the happy hour, at our beer 30s and on Fridays. Those didn't happen as frequently, especially in a way that gave you the one-to-one relationship. So the pandemic created this downward slope surrounding distant networks that we can sense this, we can gain this information because this information is coming from real data that allows us to understand how our business is working. It also then represents, again, how the move to hybrid work is going to be a challenge, and how tooling enables us to have insight into that challenge. So what are we going to do about it? Well, this is the what that's tied to that why. The why is there's a value in a hybrid workplace. In order to address that why, we need to create a workforce that is flexibly competitive. It's competitive in its nature of being flexible. It's competitive because it's flexible. It's a workforce that brings both of those natures together. It's also one that bridges the physical and digital worlds. If I have people that are working from home for the day or permanently working remote, and I have a whole bunch of people in a conference room in an office, how do I ensure that that's a meaningful engagement for both parties? How do I combat digital exhaustion as a relationship to how we're working now? How do I rebuild the social capital that I have with individuals that's draining because I don't just see them in the office. I don't have that personal relationship that I see and we talk about everything because everything's a scheduled call. How do I rethink what the employee experience looks like in these personas? All of these are what we need to address. So what we're going to talk about is how does Viva play a role? A, what is Viva? B, how does it play a role in addressing these areas? And frankly, we could talk for the next 2 hours about these topics. And again, I'm going to urge you, let's take a next step out of this webinar to talk about these deep dive areas because they are so important. We're going to talk about Connections, which is about digital culture. Viva Connections is about digital culture. Viva Insights, which is about managing and measuring, understanding employee, personal, corporate productivity, learning, which is essentially about connecting learning management to employees, and topics, which is about how do I gather this tome, this lake of assets that I have in my productivity environment and turn that into content that can be represented back in a manageable way. So let's start with connections, and Anthony is going to walk us through this. Anthony, tell us a little bit about connections and what its goal is.
Yeah, I mean, just to look at the stat here, it says 60% of people say that they feel less connected to the team after shifting to remote work. I mean, that speaks, great lengths to just like what's happening right now. We're not only hybrid, but we're fully remote at this point. I mean, eventually, maybe in 2021 we can get lucky and we're all going back, and it's more of a hybrid scenario. But we do need to focus on that happening again at any point. So this stat just shows us that we need to focus on building more of a digital culture, building more of an idea, and that our mission, vision, and values into what that would mean as to being able to interact with it online. I mean, there's that digital presence. We need to focus on something like that, and that's where Viva Connections is going to be the launch pad to do so. So here we're seeing basically that new version, that modern intelligent intranet inside of something that we already know and love, and that being Microsoft Teams. So there's a ton of information that I'd love to share here, but ultimately a lot of these updates that we're seeing on this page, and the way that we're going to be interacting with our intelligent intranet and digital workplace in the future, a lot of that was shed, a lot of the light here in the new updates were shed last September. And we're really just repackaging a lot of that to make it an employee experience platform is what, where we're moving towards as a company, but as an organization, and being able to work with other organizations to implement something like this. It's driving those mission, vision, and values forward through that digital culture. And what you're going to see here on the screen is you see a global nav bar on the far left, that being able to drive more of the connections between the outer workings of what people are working on, and driving that, I guess driving audience impressions. You're going to see news, that you're seeing that on the mobile screen here on the right with the feed. It's really driving the organizational information. So not only just from top news and being able to push that and boost that to the top from an organizational perspective, but also being able to audience that through AD groups, and being able to take advantage of the technology that we already have today, but curating that and pushing that in a different way through Viva Connections, in the sense that it's no longer something that we really have to do manually. It's being pulled together through Viva Connections, and curated on a per person basis. So not really anybody's going to have the same news feed or the same resources or dashboards. Those types of things that are really driven by the back end, which is mostly Graph, and Graph has been around for a long time.
And it's really built on top of the historical work that was done in SharePoint. Companies that have built intranets in SharePoint, they started it, they've built a lot of assets in that space. This is building on top of that legacy and bringing it forward into the Teams interface that makes it more connected to the typical experience, and also brings it to the mobile ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think the exciting part is for IT, it's not much work that we have to do in order to, get it from point A to point B, being Viva Connections. And then also from a leadership perspective, it's driving that digital culture, but it's with the information that we already have, just bringing that, to the next level, and being able to configure that to, propagate inside of Viva Connections. And then we also have, we spoke a little bit to the mobile app earlier. Mobile app isn't going to be the first thing that comes out with Viva Connections. I was actually described today that it's going to be out in general availability, starting to roll out today. So that's really exciting. We'll start to see that. And that's something that's going to be included in your Microsoft 365 licensing. And if you have SharePoint there, all of those things kind of coming together and being able to take advantage of that sooner than later.
Yeah, I was thinking about this in the context of like, what's the reason why people did intranets, right? In one sense, it was collaboration. In the other sense, it was content down. And in another sense, it was discoverability of people and information. Well, Teams is taking care of collaboration, right? That's its core goal. But then content down and discoverability, this brings it modernizes that approach beyond what people think about just as an intranet, and makes it a more engaging platform for both of those functions.
Completely agree.
All right. The next part of this is Viva Insights. And Viva Insights, tell me, we've talked about this a little bit before when we had our webinar on my analytics and workplace analytics, but kind of break down what am I using this for?
So there's basically three different categories that you'd want to, really pay attention to it in with your Viva Insights. It's going to be your personal insights. That's going to be the free version. Everybody gets to take advantage of the My Analytics, and this is going to be where you're going to see some of that information gets, stowed away in your Viva Insights. Then you're going to jump over to the Manager Insights. That's, where you're going to see your team, and that's going to be your team without any identification of who's, working on what and how they're doing things, but you get to understand it at a very high level to really understand how your team's working together, the productivity behind it, and maybe, as we talked about earlier, from like a burnout perspective or, a well-being perspective, really being able to focus in on, are my employees, being overworked? Are they working outside of hours? They work, are they in a ton of meetings and not being able to get their work done? These are things that managers are now going to be able to see at a very high level very quickly. And again, in a place where they already understand in work right now, and that being Microsoft Teams. From a leadership perspective, we're going to be able to give the capabilities of, to our leaders that they're now going to be able to see at an organizational level, being able to see everything that's going on. Are we driving towards our goals? Are we, I guess, are we really heading towards our goals? Or are we going in a completely different direction? Or maybe do we need to shift just a little bit to meet our goals that are of 2021 or 2022? These types of things we're going to be able to understand at a very, quick pace now that it's, living in Microsoft Teams. Workplace analytics is now being driven completely by Microsoft Viva Insights, and getting that at our fingertips. So what
Exactly.
you're seeing here is you can see a couple screenshots of just what people are going to get as far as, being nudged along to either take time for themselves to make sense of, more focused time, and that's going to be more of the My Analytics. But then there's also the getting more of an understanding of where your team needs to be, and then I guess curating those one-on-ones. Am I having these one-on-one meetings often enough with my employees where now, it's reminding me that, hey, there's things that are going on here that I need to pay more attention to, and it'll bubble that up for you to make sure that, it's really something that's reminding you, but it's more of an AI sense. It's not somebody nagging you. It's just, allowing you to understand that, there could be more time spent with your employees at this point. So
I
again,
think this is a
here,
really nice view of the employee burnout within a team. Understanding of how is my team working? Do I actually intend my team to be doing 5 hours plus of after hours collaboration? 20% of my employees are doing that. 40% are 1 to 5 hours. Is that what I intend? If it is, then I understand that. But if it's not what you intend, it helps put, when employees say, I'm stressed, I'm challenged by my work habits, it's giving you information about how I can do better, quiet hours, and being able to then measure that as a team and understand how well am I doing. Maybe what I intend maybe isn't even being implemented because they feel that they need to do something just to be successful.
yeah, and again, you can't, I guess you can't make any improvements if it's not being measured or it's not being tracked. So this is really where it's exciting that we don't have to do anything extra to make this happen. This is something that's going to work for us and then give us those insights, especially at a manager level where you're really able to understand how your people are spending their time. And is there something that you can do as a leader to make a change and to curate a different experience for them, making sure that they understand that there is other options than just, pushing through things, and we can have those conversations up front.
Frankly, this data is available now. This is exhaust pipe content from your Office 365 tenant, and it's de-identified, so it's not an issue of, oh man, people are thinking I'm spying on them, that I'm going to see their specific work habits. This is I've got a camera on you 24/7. This is information that provides you insights into what we can observe about the productivity ecosystem and how we can make intentional changes about how people work and when they work and how they work. And what are my unintentional consequences of my own actions or the management team or the work structure's actions take impact upon my employees and lead to a productivity environment that may not be what we desire. So there's a lot of opportunities here to be able to use data to make intentional change and have a positive outcome.
100%. And just to speak a little bit to the Outlook add-in, I mean, I live by my Outlook calendar, and this is something that has really driven me in the right direction. And it's something that nudges me in the right direction. And I don't feel bad when I ignore it, as if I were getting pinged by, a manager or something to do something. This is something where it is an idea that you can either, take and put into your day, or it's something that isn't right for this week because we're busy. So,
Hmm.
good to have those.
Awesome. Let's talk about Viva topics, really about the discoverability of knowledge. And this is a little odd one, but I think it's really valuable. Tell us about it, Anthony.
So my favorite, I guess my favorite quote for this is turning content into knowledge. And you mentioned
Hmm.
that in the beginning. I think the future of internet is finally here. I mean, this is where you're not curating based on department, you're curating on important topics and functions of a business. So here you see 60 minutes, people spend about an hour a day, or up to 7 weeks per year searching for or recreating information. What we want to do is allow people to take advantage of the things that are already out there to, either if they're curating specific information and going in a direction with, that hasn't been curated yet, but being able to take the knowledge that's already built and apply that, to whatever it is that you're building, and then moving forward and not having to recreate the wheel every single time. I think that to me is the biggest win, when it comes to, topics, in a way that we can take advantage of this new modern intelligent internet. And this is really going to be the future of where things are going.
Honestly, it highlights the failure of years and years and years of internets. Because when we did these internet projects, it's like, okay, let's get the HR team to build their site and blah, blah, blah. And then what ends up happening is those sites age over time. They become less relevant. The sites become less relevant. They become just sort of archives of themselves rather than the real information. This is about making it relevant based upon content that's stored in the environment at all times.
Yep, exactly. And if you have access to it, it'll allow you to see that. If you don't have access to it, you will not see it. So same thing, that, these same rules apply as they have in the past, but now it's just bringing it to that next level. It's bringing it inside of Microsoft Teams. It's suggesting ideas of topics and allowing certain people to publish those as curated topics. It's giving them the ability to make these topics searchable. It's going to be something that pops up now in Microsoft Search as well, and in your Bing search. These are things that are going to follow us through, and I think this is just the first stage of where AI is going to be, providing a lot of benefit. And there's still a lot of human interaction to make these things right. There's human interaction to make sure that what is been curated makes sense, but it's more of the tweaking of content and the really perfecting of what that is. It's not creating it from scratch. So that's where we see the big win. And I think, some of the examples here that we can use is either the onboarding experience or the hybrid work experience. So if you were to make hybrid work a topic, going from, having these new announcements that get, brought out in your meetings, I guess in your leadership meetings, from a regional perspective. So Wisconsin may come back, during a certain time, and then let's say your Iowa office may come back at a different time. But being able to follow that topic and not have to go out there and search for wherever people have stored these, either PowerPoints or Microsoft Stream videos and recordings, being able to just get that information handed over to you and not having to go search for it. This is where we win. And again, like you said, the age-old issue where people have to curate that information before, where you'd have to go out and specifically put it somewhere, make sure the right permissions are on it. This is now, it's bringing that information to somebody, and it even does like a daily digest where it'll give you that information if there's something new.
Think about how on our, on many of our, maybe this is the wrong example, but think about how on like Facebook or LinkedIn or so on, those platforms that are based on selling you ads will provide you with content that you're like, oh, I didn't even know I was looking for shoes, or I didn't even know I was looking for office videos, and essentially that's based upon them selling your information in order to be able to sell you now these ads for things. Well, in this case, artificial intelligence is not being used to take your information and sell it to somebody. In this case, what we understand about you based upon your usage within Office 365 can be used to recommend content to you that is inside your same tenant, and it's staying inside your same tenant. This isn't being shared with anybody else. It's you paid for Office 365, and as a result, it's helping you to find the content within your Office 365 tenant that's meaningful to you. This isn't about selling information, it's about optimizing the information inside your own tenant that's private to you and private as a relationship between you and Microsoft.
All right, two quick things on topics and one exciting thing. So that it would be the topics are SharePoint pages, and you get to curate them as you see fit. You get to relate them to other topics, and that makes them that web of information that much stronger that you're talking about. And then also you get to give topic feedback when you go and visit that topic. Are you hitting the nail on the head or not? And then you be able to modify that as needed. Just a quick note: SharePoint syntax is completely different than topics. That's been a lot of the conversations that I've had lately. SharePoint syntax is built for a very specific, like as we see on the screen here. It's digesting the information from this invoice and then storing that as content and as metadata. So as where topics is producing and pushing information out, this is more of that digestion of data.
All right, let's hit our last one. And man, this is like last but not least, because we've been talking about this idea for quite some time, which is Viva Learning and really a modern learning management system tied to your Office 365 instance.
Yeah, and this one I think we can keep short because we don't know a ton about it yet. I think it's really exciting that they haven't revealed the curtain pretty much at all. I've gotten a couple of previews on it, but nothing that's I haven't been able to play with it. So as you get to see here, there's just a wealth of knowledge that they're looking to share. I mean, the learning management systems that I've seen at other companies, they can be great, they can be blocky, they can be whatever they need to be to fit the organization. And I think the exciting part here is now you're able to take advantage of AD, you being a leader of other folks, and be able to create these streams and paths for people to follow and be able to track then those paths if they are learning something new, or is the organization as a whole, are we heading in the right direction and learning about a specific topic of information. Same thing as if, oh, I see that people are learning a lot about something different, maybe we should actually get into that, or maybe we should start paying more attention to it because it's catching the eye of people. So just getting that understanding of of Microsoft Viva Learning and being able to have those at a higher level, that understanding of how my employees like to work, and being able to integrate it in Microsoft Teams the way that you see here in this GIF, where you click a button, and as if you're inserting an image, you get to insert a new Microsoft Learn or what have you that you would include there. And so what Microsoft Learning is also doing is partnering with these other tools that have been around for some time and people already have licenses for. This is going to be a spot where now they're going to see integration, very close, where it's not Microsoft Learn, or it's not Microsoft Viva Learning all by itself. It does have a lot of these integrations, not only with third-party learning management systems, but also third-party providers. Just like there's Microsoft Learn, there's also edX and Pluralsight, things of that nature, where they're now integrating those videos and curated content right into Microsoft Learning, all as one experience.
That's what makes me really excited, is the relationship between your internally produced training content, your external content that you're requiring teams to learn. So like, for example, for one of our teams, we have 5 or 6 videos that we've recorded for everyone within that team to watch when they get onboarded into concurrency. Well, the idea that I could combine that with assets from Pluralsight or somewhere else, like how to be a consultant, how to do this well, how to run a good meeting, these things that you could say, okay, you are a certified person inside of this team because you reviewed, you've completed this content, really gets to the idea around competency-based learning and its relevancy within roles within our organizations. So
now think of a topic now, like a Microsoft Viva topic, where it's driving this onboarding topic. You have this page in wealth of information, and then you also see learnings, right? With a link to learnings right there. That's where I start to see these things come together and get really excited.
Absolutely. All right, well, we told you that the end was coming. It's come, and we would love to meet with you one-on-one. This, as you can see, we spent like 5 minutes on per topic. There's so much more to talk about. We would love to invest in you to review this content at a much deeper level. Let's pick one that you're really excited about and deep dive into it. And we'll get myself, we get Anthony, et cetera, on a workshop with you to dive into that particular area. Take advantage of it. And we'll find that this investment in each other will be an opportunity for us to be able to learn about you, and an opportunity for us to learn about how Viva can be a real asset to how you're pursuing improving your organization. Don't miss our upcoming webinars. using Power Platform, ransomware and zero trust, and of course, definitely check out the other content on concurrency.com that builds on this. Thank you very much for taking a spin through Viva, and we'll look forward to follow up with you.